Snowboarding only looks cool until you watch someone unstrap for the lift.
And skiing only looks cool until you watch someone try to walk from the parking lot to the lodge looking like a robot in a plastic body cast.
Welcome to the debate. Today, we are stripping away the polite fiction that these two sports are equal. They are not. Okay, let's just cut straight to the core of it. A snowboarder, you spend 40% of your day sitting on your butt. You were literally just sitting in the snow.
We sit because the mountain is our living room, not some kind of racetrack. But if we're going to talk aesthetics, we have to talk about the doofus factor of the skier. You can't scientifically defend the visual of a grown adult holding two poles they do not need.
They're not.
Unless you're in deep backcountry or like a severe mogul field, those poles are emotional support sticks. They're tactile pacifiers. You hold them because you don't know what to do with your hands. On a groomed run, they serve zero purpose other than to make you look like a frantic insect. Snowboarding is visually appealing because it's expressive. It's about flow. It's surfing. Skiing is just, I don't know, Euclidean geometry.
Geometry is what keeps you alive at 60 miles per hour. And frankly, I would rather look like a frantic insect than a toddler who just gave up. Because that's the visual language of snowboarding, wet pants. You are constantly connecting your rear end to frozen water. But let's go deeper. Let's talk about the economics of the gear. You guys love to talk about how comfortable your boots are.
They are comfortable.
Like oversized streetwear sneakers, but that comfort is actually a symptom of cheap engineering.
It's called progression.
No, it's called planned obsolescence. Ski boots are these 130 flex, rigid polyurethane shells. They're engineering marvels designed for immediate lossless energy transfer. A good pair of ski boots is an investment that lasts 150 days on the mountain. Snowboard boots, they're soft, they rely on foam, they pack out. You are lucky to get 60 days of hard riding before the materials just decompose and you're riding in mush. You are constantly feeding the industry money for disposable gear. It's not style, it's waste.
I will happily pay for new boots every couple of seasons, if it means I don't have to subject my feet to the absolute torture device that is the alpine ski boot. You want to talk looking cool? There is nothing, and I mean nothing, less cool than the boot walk. The sound alone is humiliating. Watching a skier clomp across the lodge floor, slipping, making that deafening clack, clack, clack sound, knees bent at some unnatural angle. It creates this visceral reaction of pity in everyone watching. I can drive to the mountain in my boots. I can dance in my boots. I have seen snowboarders wear their boots to the bar 5 hours after the lifts close.
That is disgusting, by the way. Wearing your sweat-soaked athletic equipment to a social gathering isn't a flex. It is a hygiene failure.
It's practical. A skier could never do that without weeping in agony. You rip those boots off the second you reach the car because your feet are being crushed in a vice. We keep ours on because we're actually integrated with our gear, not imprisoned by it.
We take them off because we treat the sport as a discipline, not a hangout session. We distinguish between performance time and leisure time. And regarding the gear economics, because the materials for skiing are superior, the resale market actually exists. You can sell used skis. No one is buying a used, packed-out, sweat-filled snowboard boot that's lost its structural integrity. You are buying toys, we are buying tools.
You're buying a plastic exoskeleton to compensate for the fact that you lack the core strength to balance on your own. You need rigid plastic to hold you up. We rely on our own muscular tension.
Well, that brings us directly to the biological reality of that tension, the pain and the age reality. This is where the whole cool factor just dies and physics takes over. We need to talk about the learning curve and specifically the first day.
Oh, I know exactly where you're going with this, and it proves nothing about long-term viability.
It proves everything about natural movement. Skiing is intuitive because it's bipedal. You walk on two legs, you ski on two legs. A beginner, a total novice with zero athletic background, can step into bindings, use the pizza wedge, and navigate a green run on their first morning. They stay upright, they can look at the horizon. They're engaging with the mountain immediately.
They are not engaging, they're surviving. The pizza wedge is not skiing, it is panic breaking. It is a humiliation that no self-respecting adult should perform. If you are 35 years old and you are pizzaing down a mountain, you're not an athlete, you're a traffic hazard. The snowboard learning curve, yeah, it's steeper, but it's a filter. It keeps the riffraff out.
It doesn't just keep them out, it puts them in the hospital. Let's analyze the fall mechanics. On a snowboard, because your feet are fixed, you have no ability to step out of a balance error. You have two edges, toe and heel. For a beginner, the transition is violent. You catch a toe edge, you use the board as a fulcrum to slam your face into the hard pack. You catch a heel edge, you whip your head back and slam your occipital bone into the ice.
You wear a helmet and wrist guards. It's impact trauma, sure, but it heals.
It's concussion trauma. Skiing is physically safer for the beginner because the independent leg action allows for recovery. If you slip, you step. You don't slam your head on the ground every 4 minutes. The falling leaf, where boarders just scrape down the mountain sideways for 3 miles because they're terrified to initiate a turn, is the saddest sight in winter sports. It is the visual definition of defeat.
You want to talk medical reality? Let's talk about the knee. Let's talk about the anterior cruciate ligament. Because while a beginner snowboarder might bruise their tailbone or sprain a wrist, injuries that heal in weeks, skiers are out there destroying their anatomy permanently. The source material is irrefutable on this. On a snowboard, your legs are locked together. They move as a unit. If you crash, the board goes with you. Rotational torque is distributed through the hips and core. On skis, you crash, the left ski grips the snow, the right ski keeps moving, your body rotates, and the tibia acts as a giant lever arm to snap your ACL.
That is a risk, but it's a risk managed by DIN settings and proper binding release.
Binding release settings are a statistical guess, not a guarantee. I have skier friends who blew out a knee going 5 miles an hour on a traverse because they caught an edge and the ski didn't pop. That is a 6-month rehab. That is life-altering. I would rather have a sore butt for 3 days than a reconstructed knee for life.
The knee issue is the tax we pay for higher performance. But let's look at longevity. There's a reason you see 75-year-old skiers, and you rarely see 75-year-old snowboarders. Skiing is biomechanically sustainable. You can stand tall, stack your bones, and slide. Snowboarding requires constant deep flexion, constant standing up from a seated position, constant impact. It is a young person's game.
That's because skiers are deluded about their own safety. You think because you aren't falling, you're skiing well, but usually you're just sliding around with hideous form. The pizza lets you fake competency for decades. Snowboarding demands honesty. You can't fake a turn on a board. You either do it or you fall. We pay our dues and bruises the first week. You guys skip the dues and then spend 20 years as mediocre intermediates who clog up the runs.
I'd rather be a mediocre skier enjoying the view than a principled snowboarder with a concussion. And let's be honest, most snowboarders switch to skis by 40 anyway. You all get tired of the thrashing and come over to the side of dignity.
We don't switch for dignity. We switch because our skier friends are impatient narcissists who won't wait for us, which leads us perfectly into the next source of misery.
Round 3, lifts, flats, and annoyance. Or as I call it, why I hate waiting for you.
Knew this was coming. The impatience of the skier is legendary.
It's not impatience, it's a desire for flow. Let's talk about the cat tracks, the flats. This is where the design flaw of the snowboard becomes undeniable. I'm on skis. I hit a flat section. I keep my momentum. If I slow down, I skate. I use my poles. Effortless. What do? You wobble. You hop like a distressed rabbit. And then, the ultimate shame. You unstrap one foot and you start the scoot. You look like a skateboarder pushing uphill in quicksand.
Okay, that is purely a terrain management issue. If you know how to ride, you conserve speed. But I will admit, the scoot is annoying. However, I will trade that annoyance for the absolute catastrophe of a yard sale.
A yard sale is a rare event for a competent skier.
Oh, come on. A yard sale happens whenever a skier crashes with any velocity. Your gear explodes. It is designed to explode. One skis up the hill, one poles in the trees, your goggles are gone, and now you have to hike up in those plastic prison boots to retrieve your gear. My snowboard stays attached to my feet. I crash, I tumble, I stand up. I am still a complete unit. You guys turn a simple fall into a search and rescue mission.
I will accept the occasional gear retrieval over the ritual of the binding. Every single run. We get off the lift, I'm ready to go. I'm literally sliding away as I unload. You You have to go to the side, create a roadblock, sit down in the wet snow, ratchet, ratchet, ratchet. Then you struggle to stand up, adjust your pants. It breaks the flow of the entire group.
It takes 10 seconds if you're not incompetent. Strap in and go. And let's talk about the ride down. You mentioned flat ground. Fine, you win the parking lot and the cat track. But who wins the powder? Who wins the actual deep snow?
Skiing in powder is majestic. It's traditional.
Skiing in powder is labor. Unless you have specific, massive, fat skis, you are sinking, you're fighting displacement, you're doing deep knee bends to keep your tips up. Snowboarding in powder, it is surfing, it is floating. The surface area of the board lets you plane on top of the snow with zero effort. It is a spiritual experience that skiing cannot replicate because you're too busy fighting your own equipment.
That is a gear issue, not a sport issue. You get 110 underfoot skis, you float fine. But let's talk about the conditions that actually exist 90% of the time. Ice, moguls, afternoon chop. Snowboarders are fair weather athletes. If it is icy, you guys are miserable because you only have 2 contact points. If it's full of moguls, you're done. You can't navigate them, you just scrape over them. Skiers, we own the bumps. We own the ice. We have 4 edges, we can ride everything. You guys go to the bar at 1 p.m. if the grooming isn't perfect.
We go to the bar because moguls are a man-made disaster that skiers create. You guys ruin the snow. You push it into these little piles with your sharp turns and then brag about how good you are at navigating the mess you made. And on ice, an expert snowboarder can hold an edge. It just takes actual core strength, which brings us back to why you like skiing. Less core engagement.
It requires more complex adaptability. And don't even get me started on the terrain park. You guys think you own it, but hitting a rail on skis is a technical marvel.
It's awkward. To hit a rail on skis, you have to rotate your body 90 degrees, land perfectly sideways on 2 separate sticks, balance, then rotate 90 degrees back out. On a snowboard, it is natural. You are already standing sideways. You approach, you hop on, you slide. It makes sense. Rails were made for boards. Skis on rails look like a glitch in the simulation.
It requires more skill because of the rotation. That is my point. You want the easy path. I want the technical challenge.
You call it a technical challenge, I call it fighting your equipment.
Which leads us to round 4. Who switches and why? The progression.
This is the deep dive into the psychology of the trader.
Let's look at the learning curve again. We established skiing has a high floor, easy to start, but it has a massive ceiling. Carving properly, not just skidding, but engaging the edge, bending the ski, creating acceleration out of a turn, that takes years, maybe decades to master. Snowboarding, it's a low ceiling. Once you learn to link a toe turn and a heel turn, you're basically done. You just do the same thing faster.
That is the most ignorant thing I have ever heard. Basically done? That is when the sport begins. Once you link turns, the entire mountain becomes a canvas. You can butter, you can slash, you can use every side hit. Skiing is linear. You go down. Snowboarding is 3-dimensional. And regarding mastery, because skiing is so hard to master, 90% of the skiers on the mountain have terrible form. They're in the back seat, they're waving their hands, they look frantic. A snowboarder who gets past the learning curve looks fluid almost immediately. We look good faster.
You look fluid because you're just sliding. You aren't generating power. But here's the hard truth about switching. People switch to skiing later in life because it's easier to maintain as the body ages. It's more dignified. You do not see many people switching from skiing to snowboarding at age 45. Why? Because the learning curve is too brutal and the payoff isn't there.
People don't quit snowboarding because it's uncool or because the payoff isn't there. They quit because it is exhausting. It is a full-body sport. It requires constant core engagement. It requires standing up from the ground under your own power over and over. Skiing is for people who prioritize comfort over the feeling of flight. You switched to skiing because you got soft. That's the reality. You trade the sensation of surfing for the sensation of standing.
We switch to skiing because we want to spend our time moving down the hill, not wrestling with bindings and sitting in wet snow. And let's talk about the fake switch. You see these people who claim they do both.
Yeah, they usually suck at both.
Exactly. But usually it's a snowboarder who realizes that if they want to access the real big mountain terrain, the cliffs, the chutes, the high consequence lines, they need skis. You can't traverse a knife-edge ridge on a snowboard easily. You can't hop turn down a narrow couloir as safely. The apex predator of the mountain is the skier.
That is pure propaganda. The apex predator is the one having the most fun. You can ride big mountain lines on a board. It just takes more commitment. You can't just step-turn your way out of trouble. You have to commit to the line. That's why expert snowboarders are cooler. They're taking a higher risk for the style reward. You guys are just calculating geometry.
It's called survival. And frankly, skiers are worse beginners, but we are better long-term athletes. We build a skill set that lasts a lifetime. You guys build a skill set that lasts until your first major back spasm.
Our skill set is soul. Your skill set is mechanics. And I will tell you this, every skier looks at a snowboarder in deep powder and feels a twinge of jealousy. They see the spray, they see the surf style, and they know deep down in their rigid plastic boots that they are working harder for less feeling.
And every snowboarder looks at a skier gliding effortlessly across a flat section while they're hopping like a bunny rabbit and thinks, I have made a terrible mistake.
No, we think, I can't wait to get to the steep part so I can blow past you.
Okay, we are entering round 5, final statements. One sentence, no summary, no respect. Give me your best shot.
Snowboarding wins because skiers care too much about comfort and looking rich, while we only care about the feeling of actually flying.
Skiing wins because you spend more time actually moving down the mountain and less time struggling on your butt like a capsized turtle.
This argument will never end.
If you disagree, you already know which side you're on.